Do we have any public comments on work session related items tonight?
Yes.
Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Catherine Levy, 361 2nd Street, and I am here. I know that Chief Kosel has presented some of the Blight Committee proposals to you. However, I am here to speak specifically about the Blight Commission or patrol officer in support of that. I think we need it. The blight is not going to stop even with whatever efforts are being made with new ordinances. Someone will have to enforce those ordinances. And right now, the police department is already backed up with other work that they have to do. So that's my comment. Takes less than 5 minutes. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Dick Albee, and I am here to encourage the City Council to pass the proposed resolution for racial justice, inclusion, and diversity. I represent a group of nonpartisan, concerned citizens which are working for racial justice, inclusion, and diversity in Manistee County. As you are aware, our county and community are living in an atmosphere of hate and distrust. Our nonpartisan group is taking action to correct the situation by trying to create an atmosphere of love, dignity, and respect for all people living and visiting our community. One person in opposition to our resolution stated that this resolution intends to make a Manistee part of a sanctuary immigration movement. This is absolutely not true. Since when does welcoming diversity to our community make you part of a sanctuary immigration movement? Our city needs to become a progressive city that welcomes diversity of its citizens and visitors. We need to let people know in writing that our city believes in racial justice, inclusion, and diversity. And we do this not because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do and will make our city stronger and a better place to live and visit. Unlike other resolutions that are being distributed within our county, this resolution does not ask you to disobey the law. In fact, it asks you to follow the laws with a great deal of commitment. In no way does it give up the right of free speech, but does ask all departments of our city to make a commitment to treat all citizens and visitors with respect and dignity. It's a very sad day when there are people in our community that think the term racial justice is a partisan issue. I don't know of one political party that does not believe in racial justice. At least I hope there's not. At your request, we have changed the format of this resolution. We have reviewed its contents with the city manager, and we have received complete support from Larry Romanelli from the Little River Band. We are now submitting this resolution with hopes that you will approve it for the City Council meeting on March 17th so that we can make it known that Manistee is a welcoming community to everyone. If you have any questions, please feel to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi. I want to talk about this same resolution
Please,
that Dick was
name
speaking
and address,
about.
please.
My name is Lisa Allen. I live at 74 Pine Street,
Thank you.
Manistee. I come here in support of this resolution that is currently in front of you guys, the City Council. I come as a new resident of this town, having moved here just about a year ago. On April 15th, it will be exactly 1 year. 3 years ago, my husband and I began looking for the next place we wanted to live once we retired from work. We wanted to move back to the Midwest, where we both came from, after having spent the last 35 years living and working on the East Coast in the D.C. area. We wanted to move to Michigan because we love the climate and the natural beauty, and because my husband had very fond memories of many summer camp counseling jobs in Michigan. We began our search for a new place to live in Traverse City because we had heard it was a charming little lakeside town, but TC was bigger than we thought and not the small, walkable town we wanted. But we liked northern Michigan, so we began to explore other towns. We looked all along the Lake Michigan shoreline, from Harbor Springs to Petoskey to Charlevoix, and down as far south as Pentwater. We finally visited Manistee after reading about the little old town that joined together to resurrect their old movie theater, the Vogue, and their performing arts space, the Ramsdale. We remarked that any town that cared to and was able to join together in a common civic purpose like those two renovations was likely a place we'd like to be. But when we came to visit here, as a family of color, we saw no one that looked like us. But we loved the weather and the physical beauty of the place and the town, and we loved the idea that Manistee was a place filled with folks who were willing and able to work together to make their town a better place. So we took a chance. But we were not completely sure if we would be welcome here. But we were, and we continue to be. But imagine how many more people would take a chance on our little northern town if they saw we understood that not every place cares about being warm and welcoming, but we do, and it's important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hello, I am Chris Schultz. I live at 500 2nd Street here in Manistee. It is my belief that a resolution for racial justice, inclusion, and diversity is a radical leftist proposal which will do much harm and little good. Advocates of this resolution say we must turn Manistee into a progressive city to attract young people who will work here. I've grown up in this city and have lived here for over 24 years. I've spoken to many people in this town in all age groups who are stuck in minimum wage jobs. They tell me the economy stinks and they can't climb up the ranks. Many have stated their desire to move elsewhere. I cannot understand why under such circumstances there is a movement trying to bring more people into our town when it cannot provide a good life for the people who already live here. The immigration they advocate will drive up the cost of living for our working poor and make them compete with more people for the same jobs. It is the wealthy and the corporations who will benefit from this immigration, not the poor. I also think it was nice of the amended resolution to make a mention of the Anishinaabe people's contribution to our community. However, I am curious as to why no mention was made of the Polish and German people who were the founding stock of our city and whose many descendants live among us. And I would like to know by how much will these people be marginalized in the name of diversity, as has been happening all over the country. I would also like to know what the definition of an attack is in this resolution. We already have laws against assault and battery, which I thought were enforced. We also have laws against harassment and intimidation, if the former means not leaving people alone when they ask you to, and the latter means threatening them with violence if they don't comply with your demands. Also, could someone please explain to me what are other social identities? I've been trying to work that out for the last month, and I'm still no closer to the answer than when the earlier draft of this resolution was brought before us. I have another question. Will this resolution be used as a directive to law enforcement to give priority to cases which meet its criteria? Does this mean crimes committed between members of the same group will take a back burner in our criminal justice system? If so, I believe that violates equality under the law. Things were so much easier when we just followed the law as it was written and treated everyone equally. We don't have to put people in the victim and oppressor groups and attempt to engineer a society. As Americans, we have the right to freedom of association. Nobody says Detroit is too black, Dearborn is too Arab, or Chinatown is too Chinese. Yet all over the country, we are deluged with complaints that our communities are too white, and we need to be culturally enriched with diversity. I ask you, if everyone else has a right to self-determination, why don't we? Did you know that prior to the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, whites made up about 90% of the nation's population? Today, that figure is down to about 60%. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, we'll be down to 44% by 2060, and our physical numbers will decline by some 17 million. Meanwhile, the American population will have grown by some 100 million people. How is diversity good for people like me when it turns us into a hated minority throughout the nation who are constantly scapegoated for other people's problems? Members of the council and concerned citizens, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Teresa Omachi. I'm a relatively new resident to Manistee. I live at 355 Lighthouse Landing in the Lighthouse Landing condominiums. I just became a Michigan resident in the last couple of months. I was born and raised in the Chicago area. I was brought up in a very exclusive suburb along the lake called Wilmette, Illinois, near Northwestern and Evanston. When my parents first went to that community in the early 1950s, they attempted to buy a home. And they were told in no uncertain terms that people like us wouldn't be comfortable there. In similar suburbs like Park Ridge, where Hillary Clinton was born and raised, it was the same situation. So my parents had the ability to buy a home, but if it weren't for some very reasonable neighbors who advocated to make this little town integrated, my parents would not have been able to buy a home. I am very much in favor of this resolution because I think it would give the town of Manistee a good reputation and would be welcoming to other people of color. And I noticed that I've lived in this town for about 4 years, mostly in the summer, and everyone I have encountered has been very pleasant and nice to my mother and myself. But I think if you pass the resolution, you'll be doing quite a bit to encourage people to come here and not walk on the rights of everybody else, just come and be a more inclusive community. So I hope you'll take this step and bring this resolution into law. It would be lovely, and it would send a message that people of all sorts are welcome to come here. We wouldn't be asking for any changes of law. It's just merely a statement that this is what this city stands for. And you would not be pushing out other people. You'd just be making it more heterogeneous. So thank you for this consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yes, I'm Al Fry, 2264 Murky Road, Manistee. Thank you for this opportunity, but something just really fast. The previous gentleman's comments, I think, to me, just show evidence of why this resolution is so important. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll get into the discussion. Discussion on racial justice, inclusion, and diversity resolution. Anybody have anything they want to say?
The city had provided us with a revised or some suggested language for this. I'm just wondering if everybody in the room is aware of this, of what they sent us. because that's what I thought we would be discussing tonight.
I'm unclear. You mean,
Mr. Keller, can you help me out?
Well, in your packet was the revised version.
Right.
Differs significantly from the first version that was presented. And so if that's what you were referencing, it was in your packet.
Right, but which resolution are we going to discuss tonight? The one that that the city had provided us, or the original one that was presented?
The one that's in your packet, the one the city provided.
Okay, so I'm just making sure that everybody is on the same page. That's my concern right now, is that we're working
Yeah.
from the same
That's-
document.
And is it the same as the one that is on the screen?
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
We took comments from our last discussion with you and worked to incorporate that and met with Mr. Taylor about it, so that's what we're here to see.
okay. I did miss the original meeting, so I'm catching up still, I guess. I have a couple comments on this one that I'll share with you. I won't go in, I just don't think that it's inclusive enough. It really concerns me that the word color is not in there, and I think it needs to be in there. It's more precise. It's something that we've dealt with for a long time. It's protected. I really want that word in there. And there's a number of reasons I would want that word in there. You know, sometimes in life you experience things that stay with you forever. And my biggest memory where this has ever been a factor in my life was, this one lady's really going to be interested in this. In 1969, I went to Northwestern University for the summer to take some college classes. Prior to my senior year of high school, they have a very special program there. And this was 2 years after the Detroit riots. So I remember, you know, my parents were alumni and they drove me to, you know, Chicago and looked around Evanston and went to sign in and met all of our professors, which all happened to be very well educated Black Americans who just were a great group of people. We did do an experiment on campus that summer to grapple with the problems that our country was facing with all the race riots that were happening all over the country. And they decided that we would have an experiment where we took, I think it was going to be like 4 or 5 days, where anybody who was a blue-eyed blonde was going to be discriminated against. So, you know, you'd think that this would go smoothly. It did not go very smoothly at all, because we did experience, you know, the same things that were wrong with our country. You know, standing at the back of the line, getting your books thrown around, getting locked out of the bathrooms, getting swirlies in the toilet. You name it, it happened. It was horrible. It was disgustingly horrible. It stayed with me. So for me, I really think the word color has to be in there, and I'm going to stand by that. So that would be one change that I would make in this document that you have. It says the same message to everybody, and that's something that I would want in here if this was to pass. So that being said, as a realtor, I think I would also want familia status in there, because there's a lot of discrimination against different types of family units, single moms raising children, other kinds of combinations of families. It's important to me that we're respectful of that. And it's also important to me, since we've talked about housing so much in this town, that economic status is included. So that being said, the last thing that I would want in there, that we do fully support the laws of our Constitution, laws of our federal government and our state in regards to discrimination. Those are the kind of changes I'd like to see in it. It sounds all redundant because I think it's stuff we've done, but it also makes a point that this is where we're at in 2020. So those are my comments.
Anybody else?
I'm going to tell you, I worked for the tribe I'm a white person, German, Polish, and if you think that's gonna solve your problems, we were called all kinds of names by people you wouldn't believe. And so, how are you gonna take out this prejudice by just enacting a paper? They don't care about this paper. So, and I put up with it for 18 years. So I know what you're going through when you have something like this, but I'm just reading it over and over, and I don't know where it's gonna solve, because you're gonna get this prejudice. I've been out in the county and got it. I've been all over the state and got it. And it's from people who should know better. So here we sit today with this kind of information.
So I get what you're saying. It can't hurt. We can do all this work and it can't hurt. And exactly, it can only help. I like that it does mention the special physical and mental needs. I appreciate that with my own family history. And, you know, speaking of, I kind of feel like I can represent the youth. And this week we have issues in our school with cyberbullying and harassment. And if us adults can't even figure it out, how are we to teach our kids? So we need to step up. We need to step up in this community and show our kids, look, this is how we treat people. We need to treat them with respect and kindness and stop bullying. That's a big problem nowadays. So I really support this. And we're not taking away, you guys aren't trying to take away freedom of speech. It's the right thing to do. So be nice. That's all, I know that's all you guys are trying to do. So thank you, I support it.
Was there something that happened that made you get together and bring this up?
There's something happens every day in this community,
Really?
which is really upsetting to people of different color, different social backgrounds, different religions. And it's not just this community, it's every community. But I want to make our community better, and that's why what we're asking for.
Just asked, I've been here 70 years, and
It happens every day.
I never had anybody ever.
You would not have anything happen to you. You're a white, middle-aged man.
Thank you for the middle age. I like it.
It's really neat that it's this type of group that's stepping up. It's the white, middle-aged, or the people that doesn't seem like it happens to. I mean, and it's not just our community. Like, I grew up in San Diego, and I had my fair share of discrimination. You know, they're all, you're from California, why aren't you blonde and blue-eyed? You know, it happens everywhere, but at least this small town is standing up, and I like that.
To answer some of Linda's questions about including everybody, I think we tried to do that when we said on the last paragraph that also regards people of other social identities. That's people with identities that we did not directly mention. That would mean really everybody. And then we've also said to show dignity all people regardless of their background. So we try to be inclusive of every human being. And I don't know how more inclusive we could be than to say it like we did.
I think that's very broad, and I just.
We would certainly accept your additions. I think we tried to be responsive to last time's discussion, and I think Nick had suggested age, and Aaron had suggested physical and mental special needs, and so all of that got in, and we didn't have the benefit of your comments last time. So
Right. That's one, I'm sorry, that's one's really important to me.
certainly willing to
And-
accept those as friendly amendments.
I have two amendments I'd like to add to this, if I may. I'm sorry, I got sore throat. Number one, I think the city council, amendment number one, the resolution, the city council does not in any way intend to restrict anyone's First Amendment rights with this resolution. And number two, the city council acknowledges that the federal government is the authority with regard to immigration. It does not in any way intend this resolution to restrict the enforcement of federal law. Is there anything wrong with that?
I have no problem with that. I think that's a given, but that's,
Well, I want to make sure that everybody knows everything. Okay.
Well, I am in support of the resolution, and I look at it as this is an affirmation. And, you know, before our regular council meetings, we stand and we do the Pledge of Allegiance, which is very similar in nature to what we're presenting here. It's an affirmation of things that we believe and that we want to support and acknowledge. And yes, we may have problems, and no, this is not the solution, but it is the beginning. You know, as you know, to paraphrase, you know, it may be one small step for Manistee, but it's one giant leap for inclusion, and that's kind of how I look at it. You know, when Mr. Schultz mentioned with the Polish community, my father was in World War II and born and raised here in Manistee, and he went to Parris Island with the Marine Corps, and he felt firsthand, for the first time in his life, true hatred and true bigotry because of his Polish descent. So does it happen? Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily mean because of your color or other things. It was because he had a last name with an SKI that they singled him out. And to, you know, to his dying day, my father did not appreciate a Polish joke. Yeah. You know, so.
Anybody else? I'm not against the resolution. A resolution is not law. It's a stand that we take as a community and a position that we take. And for that reason, I think it's very important. I thought a lot about this, and I take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan. I would feel a lot more comfortable if I was reassured by my city attorney that I'm not violating anybody's rights on either side of the table. Say what you want, but I just want to make sure that that Constitution and when I take that oath, I took it seriously, and I believe we need to protect that. I don't see anything wrong with this. I'm not an attorney. There's words that bother me, like tolerate. I'd like to see that change to support. We do not support rather than tolerate. Linda mentioned color. I don't see that in there. Any job description that I sent out or any job application I sent out to, it always had race, color, creed. Other social identities, I'm still not really sure what that means. I tried to look it up on Google. And it's all over the place. It's
people that we didn't identify specifically, like Linda mentioned, single family mothers.
I just wondered if it was another way of
Another social identity. So it doesn't make any difference what your social identity is. It's all people. That's what we're trying to get.
Yeah, but I tried to Google it. I couldn't come up with any really good definition. It's just like, so maybe there's a better way of explaining it. I don't know. They're just my comments. I'm not against the resolution. I think we need to make a stand as a city council. Most of this we're already doing. These are things we're doing. We're just re-emphasizing what we're doing and maybe getting it out there. Okay. Yes.
I actually, I see both points, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Albee. It would be amazing if you could make people be nice to each other. Is this going to replace the flyers that you have in the windows down on River Street, or no? Okay.
No.
So are they connected to each other?
The welcome signs?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the same group, our group,
Okay.
put up the welcome signs,
Okay.
trying to welcome everybody to the community.
Okay.
And this is another step we want to make sure that we hit.
Can it say welcome everybody instead of like listing?
No, I think it's different.
Okay.
I think it's different.
Okay. That's all.
I'm in support of it. I just want a couple small changes. I think they're important.
I would just suggest that staff can take council's comments put them into the massage resolution, have it reviewed by the city attorney, have it reviewed by the group, and then bring it back to another work session and see if we got it, what council wants.
You think we could just move forward to bringing it to council for a vote after the?
If that's council's pleasure, we don't have to bring it back to a work session. If you want it on an agenda so you can take action.
Would we have time to get it to the council on the iPads and we review it and have any before?
Well, we can. We've got to be kind of careful because, if we send it out there asking for comments, we're violating the Open Meetings Act. So what I, if you don't want it at a work session, that's fine. I'll bring it back to a regular council meeting for action.
I would be comfortable just doing it on the
Okay.
agenda, but
I'd be comfortable with that.
All right.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Seeing none.
Thank you very much.
Well, wait, there's more.
No, wait, you can't leave yet. You have to stay through the whole thing now.
I'd like to take it back.
Yeah.
Actually, there's some very, very interesting
Yes.
briefings, so I think you'd be very interested in these two presentations.
Consumer energy remediation presentation, Andrew Santini. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Council.
Down, press down to go. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Santini. I'm the project manager for Consumers Energy on our manufactured gas plant site that we have here. I appreciate Council getting me and Thad getting me on the agenda for this work session to kind of give you an update on where we're at and some of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So there's three things I want to talk about today. One, the status of the work that we've been doing on our manufactured gas plant site. And we started in 2018 and finished up in 2019. Second thing would be to kind of talk about some of the upcoming work, so the potential dredging in the Manistee River this year, and talk about kind of what to expect, the process schedule, those kind of things associated with the dredging project. And then third, just touch on, I know this is a work session, but in order for us to do the work, the city owns a parcel on the north side of the river downstream of 31, the park there. So we'd be looking for the city to enter in a temporary license, which you've done in the past, to be able for us to do work on the property. Now, it's just a river, it's not on land or anything. It's just because you're an adjacent property owner, you own out to the middle of the river. So in order for us to dredge, we need your approval. So kind of just to step back, usually just one quick slide to kind of talk about the history. Before natural gas was available, gas was manufactured by burning coal. They'd capture that gas and send it out for distribution to the community. So there was an manufactured gas plant, so I'll say MGP a lot, that was in Manistee. It's upstream of 31 Bridge, between the rail bridge and 31 on the south side. That was operated between 1882 and 1949. Consumers acquired the property in 22, retired in 49, decommissioned it in 55. Hopefully I don't blind you with this laser, but so the plant was in the operational site. So there's kind of the eastern third of that property there was where the actual plant was. The second part of the process was there was a relief holder. So when they generated the gas went to that relief holder, and then it went out to distribution. And then the third component of the site is the Manistee River. So over the years, we've been doing investigations, different studies. In 2018, we implemented our remedial strategy for the operational site and the relief holder site. So I think I presented last year, or my consultant Arcadis, on the in-situ solidification stabilization, or ISS, where we would mix Portland cement, slag, water, a slurry, mix it with the contaminants, encapsulate it in place because they were deep. And then our current activities to get into the river this year. So how did we do it over 2018, 2019, this in situ solidification stabilization, ISS? There was three main ways we did it. One was by auger. So you have it's this upper photo here. Sorry, it's kind of small, but it's on a crane. We mix the batch grout on site, put it down the auger. It spins, a 6-foot diameter auger spins, goes down 40, 50 feet, pulls up, get a complete mixed column that solidifies over time, and it's a concrete block. The second way, so what we did, the site, I'll show another picture, but we did the perimeter of the site with auger so that we can have a stable work surface. Then we jumped into the middle of the site, removed the top 15 feet. Anything that was impacted, we sent off-site. Anything that was clean, we staged on consumers' property, sampled it. That material will get reused when we backfill, because right now you've kind of probably seen it's a big hole there. So internal to the site, we did the mixing with an excavator bucket, same system where we pump the grout in, we mix it with an excavator, and do these in 20 by 20 foot cells. And the third way we did it was jet grouting, so there was a storm sewer, we had impacts underneath. And since both of those methods are more vertical, the jet grout is high pressure that can go at an angle, so we're able to get underneath without damaging the storm line. Here's just a quick shot of where we had the operational site. So in 2018, the orange line, the dark orange, is where we did the auger mixing. So we did around the perimeter of the site, the east, south, and the west. And then we jumped in the internal side, did the bucket mixing. In 2019, we went out in the bank and in the river and did the mixing of the impacts with the auger. And so at the end of 2019, this whole area, the impacts from the old MGP site were solidified in place. And they're all, anywhere from 18 to 45 feet down. Similar, so that other site where we just had the relief holder, a little smaller footprint, the same method, go down, remove the top material, do the ISS, backfill it. We were able to restore that area with asphalt and topsoil and seed. So the second topic for today is just to talk about what we're planning to do potentially for this year. And that would be dredging into the river. So I kind of want to give a sense of what you might see in the river, assuming we get all the permits and approvals in place in time. But we would be doing mechanical dredging. So I know you guys are along the river. You've probably seen people doing more of the dredging on the downstream end of the Manistee River, but we would be doing a mechanical dredging. So we'd have an excavator sitting on a barge. On the photo on the left, there's a environmental bucket or a clamshell bucket that basically will go down to the bottom, clamp down, pull it up. It's a sealed, so there shouldn't be any turbidity that you would get out of there. And then we just do that all throughout the river. We'd be working in what's called a moon pool configuration, where it's a roughly 40 by 40 foot frame that sits on the outside of it's kind of that second picture and the third picture as well, the middle and the right, where you'd have a turbidity curtain that goes from the surface down to close to the bottom of the sediment. And so we'd be working dredging within that moon pool, so that turbidity and things that get stirred up, if they do, then that's kind of contained in that area. The other thing we'll have is a full-time sheen crew. So if sheens or turbidities do get released from the operation, there's a full-time crew that their whole job is to go look for oils or sheens of things that might be escaping and sop them up with absorbents or pads or booms. So some of the other kind of components here, we'll just, we'll talk about them. So as we're excavating the material, and please stop me if I ramble on, or if you have questions, it's a work session, so let me know if you have a question. I'll answer it the best I can. So as we're dredging, we're going to be removing the material out. We place it in what's called a scow. It's like a similar barge, but it's got sides. When that gets filled up, it gets pushed out with a push boat up east of where the railroad tracks are. I'll have a map that kind of shows where that is, but to kind of where the former Ironworks property is, to a transfer area. And then once it's in that transfer area, it'll get moved to a processing area where we will dewater the sediment. So you kind of have a water sediment mix. we'll place the material in a processing area, let the water drain out. The water's treated on a treatment system that's on site, and the sediment, that once it gets solidified enough, we can send that to the landfill. We will be doing additional environmental monitoring, so we'll have, and they're all based on some of the permits and approvals that we'd get from Eagle or the Corps. But turbidity monitoring, air monitoring, noise monitoring. So we'll have monitoring on site at our work areas and make sure we're within limits. Once we're done with the dredging, we have a confirmation step. So the areas were developed based on the sampling that we did. So we were really conservative as far as laterally and also vertically. So wherever we saw potential impacts, we're going to go to those depths at that location. So it's not like just going hopscotching around the site and doing a spot here to this depth, a spot here to this depth. It's a comprehensive removal across the channel. But once we're done with that, once we're done dredging, we'll go in and take cores and we'll on a grid pattern. And if we didn't get everything, then we'll go deeper. If we did, then that's good, and we'll move on to the next cell. And then backfilling, that process would be, we're not allowed to backfill within inside the navigational channel from the Army Corps, but anything outside of that navigational channel will be backfilling to create a stable slope if needed. And then once we're done, there will be a post-construction bathymetric survey to make sure that where our baseline is for the river sediment. And then next year we come back and do another survey to see if anything has changed. Any questions at this
I
point?
had one question.
Okay.
You said you were going to, once the sediment was solidified or whatever, you're going to take it to a landfill. Which landfill does it?
It goes to the Manistee Republic landfill.
It does?
The county landfill,
Okay.
yeah. That's where all the material for the other projects went as well.
Okay, I was just curious.
Okay. So there's 3 areas that we're counting, calling them A, B, and C. A and B is located between the railroad tracks and 31 Bridge. A is adjacent to, it's kind of hard to see, but it's up in the upper right. It's orange. It's just outside of where we were doing all of our ISS work last year. Those depths range from 2 to 12 feet. Typically, the deeper depths is right next to where our ISS monolith is. In the yellow area, that's a 2-foot dredge cut across the entire channel. There are a couple areas where we will go deeper, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet. MDOT has some cables that are just upstream of the bridge, and so we're able to dredge, in that area. We'll be doing a hydraulic dredge, which will be just a little different so we don't damage the cables, but instead of using an excavator bucket, we'll have a big suction hose and able to take out the top half-foot. And then for the design, there's outfall. There's different offsets for different structures, 20 feet for the outfall, and some of the railroading utilities will have, offsets as well. So Area C is downstream of 31 Bridge. It's about 900 feet, and that's just a 1-foot cut over that entire reach. So the property that I mentioned earlier is this parcel here where the city owns. So again, we're not doing anything on the land or on the bank. We don't need access for that. We just need the city to sign the temporary license to say you're able to do the dredging inside the channel. Some of the stuff I already mentioned, but it is a slide. So this is the railroad bridge, and upstream is where we'll have our transfer area. So the barges will come up. They'll have a loader up here that unloads it, takes it to this is the Ironworks, former Ironworks property. Here's Consumers property. So we're going to transfer it. There's a haul truck that comes in here, dumps it, lets the water settle, lets the sediment settle, capture the water. That gets treated and discharged, and the sediment goes to the landfill. So we're going to, there won't be any traffic from that process out into the city streets. We will see some traffic when we are having trucks come off for hauling to the landfill. I think I covered this again. We can't. There's a certain elevation the Corps won't let us backfill to, but anything outside the channel, as long as we maintain a stable slope, we're able to put in some clean sand. So once we're done with the dredging portion, we're going to head back into finishing the restoration of that operational site. So the big hole that's still there Once we're done, we're going to build that bank up. And this is a slide, is a cross-section to kind of show, at the toe to kind of up to near the water line, which we might need to raise that with the water levels going so high now. But it'll be rock and riprap to make sure that that bank is armored and it won't erode. And then above that will be native grasses and topsoil and seed. Just 2 more slides, sorry to take so long. So some of the communication we've done, we've had some stakeholder communications with, like I said, we've submitted permits and work plans to the Army Corps of Engineers, to Eagle and Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, formerly DEQ. Talking with adjacent property owners, so I have a majority, went around and talked to every property owner and have access with a majority of them at this point, so there's a couple that I still need to get. We still do have our website available, and we'll do monthly updates. I should have put that link on there, but I can give that to Thad, but it's the www.jonesst for street, so jonesstmgp.org. So that's where we'll have information that we'll have out there. Now, I haven't updated it with this project yet, so it has a lot of the old information, but I do have new fact sheets and FAQs that I'm going to put up there within a day or two. So that'll at least get up there, and I'll make sure to get the website updated very soon. And that's kind of our way to say, hey, here's the work we're doing. Is there any notifications? So we've also had communications we'll submit a notice to mariners and coordinating with the Coast Guard and other shipping interests, and probably find spots around where boat launches and things that we can kind of place a sign or map to kind of let people know for the charters and just recreational boaters, hey, there's going to be some dredging going on. And we're not closing the river down. We've got to stay mobile for the big ships that come through, and also for the recreational folks. So when the big ships come in, we'll get out of the way. For the smaller ships, they can move around, or we can move. But so our operations are going to be mobile, so that we can accommodate everybody. So this is a tentative schedule. Again, we are kind of waiting for frost laws to lift, and also for approvals from the Corps and from Eagle. If we get whenever we get those, we'll mobilize to the site, start doing some of the construction on site on consumers' property, and be ready to go into the river. So if all goes well, we might be able to start dredging mid-April, mid-end of April, and dredging would likely be into the beginning of June, depending on when we can get started and how well the process is going, how quickly it's going. And then any of the backfill would likely be in June, and then the rest of the work would be in July and August and September to kind of do the restoration at the operational site, build the bank up, bring the soils back over. But our goal is to really try to get out of the river, doing in-river activities, before kind of majority of people are out there boating. And that's all I have for kind of a status and
Any questions?
work.
I would note, Council, that the license that Andrew referenced, that'll be on your agenda for next Tuesday for your consideration. And again, I just want to make sure, it's not going to be anything on the land that they're going to be doing, it's just going to be in the river.
Seems like you've been there forever.
Unfortunately,
long-
yeah, we had some issues the first year. We had some, we found some artifacts and things that that kind of delayed us a bit, and then we had we found the skull, and then so we worked with the tribes and the Corps, and that kind of delayed things, and then we got going a little later than we wanted to last year. So.
I'm not complaining, I'm just saying that I'll bet you'll be glad when this is done.
No, I typically will come up once a week and spend the night up here and be on site. So this is it's going to be sad if we get this done this year. Then I'm gonna figure out another reason to come up to Manistee. No, I've been doing it the last
Well, thank you for all that you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Discussion, neighborhood enterprise zone. Kyle Story.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Kyle Story. I'm the City of Manistee Zoning Administrator and Manistee County Planner. Tonight, the presentation before you is about neighborhood enterprise zones, and by no means am I an expert on this. This is more so of an educational, informational presentation going over the process and steps moving forward for putting this into fruition. Is there a way to view the map?
Try going this way, so I'm not blinded again.
Pardon?
All right, so the outline for tonight's presentation goes over a quick overview, how this program works, the process to get it into fruition, as well as the different target areas within the city. The overview of this program is that it provides a tax incentive for residential housing. Local qualified units of government may designate one or more areas as a neighborhood enterprise zone. The program was established to spur development and rehab residential housing, and it also encourages owner-occupied housing and new communal investment opportunities. So how it works is the community reduces taxes on property for up to 15 years in different revitalization areas and neighborhoods that they designate. Developers and owners must first seek approval for an NEZ benefit before starting a project. There are two different types of projects that can be undertaken in this type of zone. So the two are a rehabilitated facility or a new facility. The rehabilitated facility is defined as an existing structure with current true cash value of $80,000 or less that has or will have as its primary purpose residential housing consisting of 1 to 8 units. A new facility is defined as a new structure or portion of a new structure with 1 or 2 units, one of which will be owner-occupied as a principal residence. So all the following items must be met, and a new facility does not include apartments, rented or leased, a mixed-use building located in a mixed-use building, or located in a qualified downtown district. There are 8 different steps for this to come to fruition. The first 4 include the governing body designates an area, passes a resolution, and meets the percentage of land required. A 60-day notice is step 2. After or before passing the resolution, the assessor in each taxing unit must be identified. Step 3 is finding of fact, and the city must find the neighborhood enterprise zone consistently supports the master plan and the city's economic and development goals. Step 4 would be adoption of a statement and goals and policies regarding maintaining, preserving, and improving housing development regardless of income levels. Steps 5 through 8 include a housing ordinance, which the city would pass a housing inspection ordinance to ensure compliance and of local and state codes. Step 6 would be a public hearing 45 days after the notice is sent out, and then the action on the resolution would happen after that. Step 7 would be the assessor provides the city with values of different neighborhood enterprise zone properties and other information the city deems necessary. Lastly, step 8, the city clerk would notify the Michigan Tax Commission of the resolution's passage, a copy of the resolution, the NEZ parcels, as well as the addresses and code numbers. So to stop here for a quick second, does anyone have any questions or thoughts about any of this? I know it's a lot of information, and just want to reiterate, I'm not an expert, but go ahead.
What would be an estimated time frame to make something like this happen from start to finish?
Developing the actual neighborhood enterprise zone, 4 to 6 months. I don't know. I don't really know. It's a guess. I mean, with the 60-day notices and notifying different agencies and things and developing an actual area as well as enacting the ordinance, I would suppose it would take different staff and agencies. So that's just a guess. I couldn't really tell you. So going through the different steps, 1 through 8 quickly. Process 1 would be the governing body enacts a resolution, platted parcels of land. They must be compact and contiguous. The number of parcels at a maximum percentage of the city's acreage will be about 15% of the city is the maximum that can be designated. They can be split up between two different contiguous compact land masses within the city's districts, but it must be no more, or it has to be less than 15%. Step 2, the written notice provided to the assessor and the governing body of each taxing unit not less than 60 days before passing the resolution. So right there, that's 2 months. And to find this come before the planning commission, and then, that's another month in itself. Finding the zone and having the staff time to work on it, I'd say that's another month or two. So right there's 5 months. So step 2, written notice to the assessor and to the governing body of each taxing unit not less than 60 days before passing the resolution. Step 3, making sure it meets with the master plan, the neighborhood preservation, economic development goals. This step wouldn't take too long. Step 4, adopting a statement going over the goals and objectives and policies relative to the maintenance, preservation, improvement, and development of housing for all persons, regardless of income level, living within this proposed zoning area overlay, if you will. Step 5, the housing ordinance would need to be passed, requiring that before the sale of each unit, there needs to be an NEZ certificate, which is in effect, including inspections made on the unit to determine compliance, as well as the sale may not be finalized until there's a compliance with these local zoning and building codes. Step 6, the public hearing will need to be not later than 45 days after the date of notice before acting upon the resolution. Step 7, assessor determines and furnishes the city with the amount of true cash value for each property. And then lastly, the city clerk would notify the state tax commission. So the different slides before you now include potential target areas. The R2 district in the city is the most robust and dense with population, as well as housing stock. That could be an interesting place to start. The planning department thinks that the R2 would be a viable area near key street segments, which you can see on the map in blue. North side target area, yellow, we can see on the map in front of you, as well as the south side target areas. So the neighborhood enterprise zone is a great opportunity to fix the current housing stock in the city, as well as have long-term ownership structures for individuals who are seeking home ownership. On this map here, does anyone have any ideas or any questions, suggestions, or comments about areas or any places that this would be viable? Is this an interesting concept? What is the pulse, I guess, of the council towards something like this?
I think it's a great idea, and I think one area to look at would be down in the Maxwell Town area between 5th Street to maybe 9th Street, in that general area. Again, 15%, if you kind of look at it, there's a number of properties around Davis and Ramsdale Street that would be a great place to start. Maybe not take the whole 15%. Let's make a parcel where we know we can have an impact, where we have houses that are certainly in that in less than desirable condition, that we could, perhaps get people interested into, making them comfortable living homes again and bringing them back into the stock.
So Maxwell Town from 5th to 8th Street is what your recommendation is?
Well, again, it's a large area, but I would think, a 3 or 4 block area at least to look at as a good test site.
Thank you.
Just my suggestion.
I agree with that. I think we need to do something in Maxwell Town. I think it'd be a perfect opportunity to do that.
I think the equalized value of those parcels should be around 80,000 or less, would you say?
I would say, but yes.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, there's at least 3 that I know that are under 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I know that's around my district. My house values around that area have gone down. Where a lot of other districts have gone up. So that would be a good area.
Yeah, I think actually if, for the north side, with what the seniors are going to do, which is going to be a it's gonna be beautiful when they put in that housing for the seniors there. It's gonna be nice looking when they put in the development, hopefully on Ford Street, with Hillcrest Apartments. I think normally when you see development like that go in, it does spur a lot of residents to maybe spruce up their properties because they're sitting next to something new and shiny and looks nice, so they kind of pay a little bit more attention. And so I think that will have a little bit of a domino effect throughout the neighborhood. I think that's why I would support maybe working towards something between 5th and 9th Street in Maxwell Town. I think they could really use it. So.
Thank you.
So I think you're up next.
Oh, shoot. Great. I won't have to go too far then.
We're certainly getting our pound of flesh from you, Kyle. We're working it to your last day in town.
All right, so once again, not an expert, though this is an educational presentation about another housing issue plaguing different areas around the state, specifically tourist destinations, including Northwest Lower Michigan. So this presentation is about short-term rentals and ways that different communities around this area have enacted different policies and regulations to combat the housing stock from going to full-time short-term rentals. So the city of Manistee has been there's been a lot of talk around the office of the planning department about short-term rentals. And it's the hope of the planning department that after this presentation, there'll be a better understanding of the different issues around these, as well as different regulatory matters that are coming into fruition around the areas. So a short-term rental is defined as either a vacation rental or short-term rental is renting out a furnished home or condominium for a short-term stay. Some people rent it out for weekly bases, and monthly agreements are most common. Short-term leases are more common in areas with high demand and low supply of rental properties. It allows landlords to increase or decrease the rent after each short lease period, and also allows the landlord to be more selective on who they choose to occupy their homes. Many different short-term rental places exist. These are just a few, honestly, of the magnitude of the different potential areas you can search to find short-term rentals, including national brands, local areas, as well as international as well. So this data comes from only 2 different rental sites, including Airbnb and HomeAway. The increase from Q3 in 2016 to Q3 in 2019 was a 284% increase in this area. This takes into account the different listings that were on both websites. So huge uptick in different listings on just those 2 sites from 3 to 4 years. The data in this graph is limited to those 2 listing sites, though. You can see a constant uptick in the different rental units being off the market for short-term listings. The lulls in the graph are in the winter months or the off-season, and eventually in 2017 a different data source was added. So it shows a constant uptick in rental units from 2016 to 2019, and it will only continue to go up in the opinion of many experts. So this model was created in the off-season in the winter months and showcases different short-term rental areas around the city, showcased in the purple circles. You can see at the north side near the lake along the Harbor Village area has many. The south side has its fair share as well, but just to reiterate, this is only data from 2 websites, and it's as of December 2019. Does anyone have any questions about these data sources or these different graphs?
So based on that you've only picked 2 of these, you assume that the numbers are a little bit higher when...
That's it's more than an assumption, I guess, at that point, I would say. There are different pros for short-term rentals, including different jobs through management and cleaning services. It does support a very robust tourism economy by providing additional lodging to visitors. It also provides money to landlords and the opportunity to generate income with their properties. The cons outweigh the pros that we've come up with in the sense of the different cons, including inequality within the lodging sector. Lack of regulation offers an unfair advantage over other commercial options within different sectors. The safety concerns of short-term rental include a lack of fire, safety, and occupancy inspection raises the safety concern. Impacts on housing supply. A lot more people would increase their investment properties and the loss of supply for long-term housing units. The loss of community character through short-term rentals includes additional traffic, noise, parking issues, as well as trash issues. A quote that we found was, "A vacation rentals being turned into party houses with nightmarish results for neighbors." Anyway, the last one is driving up home and rental prices. Current residents can no longer afford to live in their homes or find affordable places to rent long-term. This is just a potential reason for that. Anyone have any comments or questions?
Is there some reason that some of the homes down in Maxwell Town are getting involved with that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Is there some of the homes in Maxwell Town, are they being short-term rental and nobody's fixing them up?
I am unaware of those being short-term rentals. I'm not sure if those are being inhabited by anyone, really. If long-term or short, I don't think it's in those areas. Mick, can you talk about that?
Well, I think you're saying there was a few dots in the Maxwell Town area.
Well, I know there's some, I know
Yeah.
by experience that there are several in my district that are Airbnbs.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that those have had some renovation. They've,
Yeah.
you know, in order, you gotta be to a certain level in order to be able to be competitive in that. But,
Right. So it's citywide, it's on the east side, it's on the west side, it's on the north side. So, to your point though, it is being experienced in all areas of the town, including Maxwell Town, I guess, as they were stating, so. Is that what you were asking?
So every landlord doesn't report it when he's renting them out.
Oh, true, that's also true. Some of the data isn't actually on the map because of the lack of, so. The need for housing has been showcased and noticed by many different agencies in the City of Manistee Economic Development Plan for June of 2019. Housing was one of the major issues facing the city. In the opportunity section, listed as the #1 opportunity was affordable housing and multifamily housing. The #2 biggest issue listed in the threats section was the lack of affordable housing. And #4 biggest issue listed in the weakness section was the lack of low-income housing. Different cities around the area are experiencing a huge uptick in their different guests as Grand Traverse County hosted 53,000 guests during the year, pulled in over $8 million in revenue because of that, including 10% of the state's total revenue. These figures are up more than 80% from 2017 and have more than tripled since 2016. East Bay Township has an annual $450 short-term rental licensing fee, so just consider that amount, and as we look at this this map of all the purple dots, times those by 450, I mean, consider the impact of that. And there's a quote there, "We'd like city officials to recognize unrestricted short-term rentals in commercial zones are major contributors of housing shortages." That was picked up from an article in USA Today, so.
Now, Traverse City went through a hard time with the short-term rentals for a long time.
Yeah, definitely, it's a very hot topic, if you will.
Of course, they don't like to report them because they don't want the taxes to go up.
I can't hear you.
I said they don't like to report it because then the taxes, they don't want to see the taxes.
Oh, yeah, sure, definitely. The different goals of short-term rental policies include balancing, preserving, fairness, regulatory, as well as housing stock. So we need to balance it's our opinion that we need to balance the desires of the local community with that of the landlords. We want to preserve and ensure the character of the city is not lost and quality of life does not diminish. We need to increase fairness by the need to have an equality among all short-term renters, i.e. bed and breakfast, hotels. Regulation ensures that some kind of safety and noise standards are enforced and regulated. the different ways to develop a way to ensure that all long-term housing needs are not abandoned is something that a short-term rental policy could help address too. So long-term rentals, safety, fairness, and preserving the character, as well as balancing the needs of the local community. We've come up with 3 different options for potential short-term ordinance language. Short-term option 1 is an owner-occupied dwelling to rent for one person or one family for periods of less than 30 days. So these 2 options, both less than 30 days. The second one is a 2-family or multiple family structure where one unit is occupied by the owner. So in short-term option 1, the owner lives in the house. It's either rented out and on one of the bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, and periods of not less than 30 days. So that's the main point. Owner occupied, not less than 30, or not more than 30 days. So, and there should not be more than 2 bedrooms rented at any given time. That'll help with safety as well as noise and things like that. Option 2, it's very wordy, I understand that, but the main point is more flexibility. Dwelling unit that's occupied by the owner, rented for one person or one family less than 30 days. One dwelling unit in a non-owner occupied 2-family structure offered to rent for one person or one family for less than 30 days, as well as a dwelling unit in a 2-family or multiple family structure where one unit is occupied by the owner for periods of less than 30 days, not more than 2 bedrooms for rent at any time. And short-term option 3 is more appropriate for communities that do not wish to allow commercial uses in residential districts, including one or more dwelling unit in a multiple family unit, a period of less than 30 days, or short-term rentals would not be allowed outside of the mixed use or commercial districts. So these are 3 different options that are being introduced to different areas and experimented with. Does anyone have any comments or anything about those 3 options? Or any comments about this type of regulatory measure towards housing in general?
Who's regulating this? Who's going to be in charge of if it's been more than 30 days or there's 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom?
That's a great question too. So it would be, I understand it would probably be a codified ordinance. Do you have any?
The best way would be to, if council would even want to consider anything like that, we could incorporate it into our existing rental inspection program. That's one of the problems that we have with our rental inspection program is we don't know about all the short-term rentals that are available in town. We just can't get a handle on it. So, if we had something like that, we certainly could add it to the responsibilities of the rental inspection program.
I don't see, I guess I'm missing the point. I understand them being inspected for safety and everything, but how does that regulate how long a period
No,
things are rented for?
what I'm saying is if at some point council wanted to consider one of these options, where it's a 30-day or whatever, if we have a rental inspector, that might be just added to their duties to check on that, whether they're complying with the 30 days or not.
To your question,
I don't know how that's gonna work. If it's an Airbnb and they're renting it out to different people, say 3 different groups of people or 3 different couples, I don't know how you're gonna regulate that.
So basically, you'd have to make sure these people are registering.
That's the key.
Right.
That's the adjusting.
Right,
Yeah.
but there's no way I can see that you would tie that into the responsibilities of the inspector to see how long people are staying.
There would have to be some process, and the point I'm getting at is it would have to go through the rental inspection program, and then we'd have to make some modifications to it. And I don't know what those are.
And my suggestion, if we did this, is take it in stages. The first and foremost is being able to understand where these rental units are and have them inspected and have them managed to some degree. And not necessarily, maybe start off with limitations or have some, discussions with property owners that are in this business to make sure what's fair and equitable and manageable. If we're going to have a rule, we want to be able to enforce it, and I don't know how you would do that, although most of this is done off of the internet, so it's not invisible. I mean, you found 185 people in Manistee, and then if you use the common math of $450, that's $83,000 that's on the table right now that we're passing up every year, that we should be able to bring, and that certainly would go a long way to paying for somebody to manage and control it. But I do think that there's an issue. We have no idea what kind of fire and safety conditions, and it's not always fair to the people who are in business in the hotel and motel business too. I mean, they're paying taxes, they're paying, you know, all the fees, they're doing all the inspections, and, you know, somebody else can come in and get the same rent benefit, if not more, and not have any of the other obligations or requirements. So I think it's reasonable to think that we should probably step into this, at least to the point where we inspect and manage to the point where we know where, how many, and then maybe the next step is to figure out what's the right amount and where. And
Well, right now, any of the short-term rentals that we're aware of or become aware of, then they're approached and become part of the rental registration program, and they're just treated like any other rental unit. There's no special considerations given to them. So it's not that we're not addressing any of the short-term rentals. Those that we know of or become aware of, we do address. But that said, there's others out there we're certainly not aware of.
And this is big, and this is big business. I mean, you know, obviously, if you have 185 rentals out there, that's a lot of revenue that's coming into the city that we don't necessarily want to kibosh without having a real understanding of all the impacts.
Well, I've been on some of these websites, and you may come up with 185, but you can't come up with their addresses unless you register to try to go through the reserve a unit. So you can see pictures of them, but you can't get an address. So it's you know, it's just a number that you can pull off. This is how many are available, but it doesn't identify the properties, because how are you going to do it without going through and registering? I think it's more fair, to me personally, this is just an idea, is to let, you know, everybody know that if you are doing a rental, that they should be inspected, and that there's some grace period, or there's some incentive for them to call, like maybe a discount on this first inspection or something, to get them to understand that it's important, because there could be consequences for not doing it. So it's just something I think we need to talk more about. But
Well, I was thinking like some kind of educational thing for the public to know, hey, we need to have this process, and, you know, a grace period of this is the process, we need to get registered, or even, you know, let neighbors know, hey, if you know that there's an Airbnb out there, report it or something, because we need to crack down on them.
Don't worry.
Ever got an ordinance on the city ordinance, or do they do it under the short-term rental, or how do they do it?
We're going to get into that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. The excitement continues as we talk about the licensing requirement examples that other communities are putting into fruition. Person shall not operate a short-term rental without a short-term rental license. The owner of the short-term rental property must file an application. The permit must be visible in the listing of property on any and all respective websites. No property shall be licensed as a short-term rental unless the owner has owned the property for 2 or more years and transfers to a trust where the owner of the property is the beneficiary of a trust, or to a corporate entity where the owner of the property is the majority owner of the entity, shall not constitute a break in the period of ownership. The short-term rental license is non-transferable with the sale of the property. That's an example of ways that communities are regulating it through licensing. Other communities are instituting a local agent or property manager management plan, including designating a local agent to whose physical address of residence or business is within Manistee County or within 30 miles driving distance. The agent shall be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to respond to tenant and neighborhood questions or concerns. The owner shall notify the jurisdiction in writing of any modifications within 5 days of any such modifications, and acknowledgement in writing from the property owner and local agent that they've read all regulations. The short-term rental property owner must also submit a document that certifies the accuracy of the information. Different fee examples include annual, semi-annual, and other potential fees. The annual fee that we've seen most commonly is $500. A semi-annual fee of every other year of $750 has also been talked about in other communities. Having fire and building inspections or other potential fees and licensing fees would go towards the processing, monitoring, and administration costs for running the city's short-term rental program. Different penalties include if any person found operating a short-term rental without a valid license would have to pay 3 times what the licensing fee is at the discretion of a certain enforcement agent, and other penalties would apply the codified ordinance. So there are the sources, and here's the contact information for the new city zoning administrator coming in. So does anyone have any other comments or questions about this type of regulatory affair for the city? Is it something that's encouraging, or is it something that's more detrimental? I know that you've stated that it's encouraging, but yeah.
But Kyle, can you give us some other communities in our local area that have established these short-term rental policies?
Yeah, Charlevoix up north, Petoskey, Traverse City as well. Regarding this county, I don't know of any others besides Onekama. Just worked through theirs and they adopted that. So.
And what did Onekama come up with?
They came up with a sample that was similar to the things like that, not more than 30 days, owner occupied. The owner must have been an occupant for a few years, licensing fee, and then things like that. I can send definitely more information along as well, though.
Anything else? Mr. Story, before you sat down, I was sad to hear that after 11 months you're going to be leaving us. I want you to know that we appreciate, as the city, we appreciate all that you've done. We appreciate the positive attitude and all the hard work you've done. You've brought us through a very busy time. We appreciate that. We wish you all the luck of the world in future endeavors. And please stop in and say hi once in a while when you're around. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, discussion on budget priorities. Some of this has already been done when we talked about the projects that we were going to look at for bonding and the things that we have to do, and we're going to incorporate those into the budget. But we just wanted to make sure that if there were other ideas that council had, that we can try to work those into the draft budget. So beyond what we talked about for bonding, are there other items that the council would like us to try to work into the budget?
How about the First Street Beach band shell? Try to move forward with that.
With
the needs assessment?
Okay.
We got a commitment for at least $10,000, and maybe more coming, but we need to follow up if we're good stewards.
Okay.
Well, other issues that we've always talked about, of course, is adding a blight officer.
Okay.
And streets. We need to just always keep that in the forefront so people know that that's moving forward.
Also, maybe something with the sidewalks and bike paths, some of the stuff that Kyle and the Planning Commission were doing with different walkability studies, maybe seeing what we can do to enhance some of those processes.
Okay.
Are we set with our buildings? Improve depreciation on our buildings, like roofs. I'm thinking about the fire hall.
Yeah, we're looking at some tuck pointing there along with the roof. Yeah.
Okay. The old waterworks building? We do that?
That is gonna, we've had that cost in there for a roof. It was all part of the bond. We were looking at the roofs at the fire station, the roof at the old waterworks, the roof here, you know, tuck pointing at the fire station there, and, you know, infrastructure to enhance street repairs, things of that nature. So those are already looked at in a bond. Okay, absent any others, staff's gonna be meeting next week for 2 days to try to get us to a balanced budget. So we'll work on these, see what we can do.
Okay. Any questions?
I've got a couple. I was asked a couple times about when the trash bag thing was gonna start. Is that April? For the new-
That's gonna be part of our, is that part of our new agreement, or is that separate?
Yeah, it is. The mandatory carts and then the opt-out to buy the trash bags would start July 1st. So we're working with Republic right now on an implementation schedule. Part of that has public education and some media releases and stuff.
So if you go to the bag pickup, then you don't get that charge on your water bill?
If you opt out of the cart, you do not get that refuse charge on your water bill, but you have to buy the bags
Right.
to put them out.
Okay.
And where?
That question's been asked to me repeatedly, and I said, yes, that bag, the cost is buried in the bag.
Yep, and if you want to pay both ways, that would be great.
Great. I do need a cart, by the way. Who am
Well, if
I?
you're paying $9 and you just want the bags, the $9 will come off and you'll just buy the bags.
Correct.
And where are you getting the bags?
The bags have been ordered from.
No, I mean, where does the citizens buy the bags?
They will be for sale at the local, do we decide if we're doing them here? We are. We're still contemplating selling them at City Hall, but we also will be reaching out to the local stores to be able to carry those. So just as an FYI, and I've got a press release coming out, but the yard waste bags that we've used for decades, the state of Michigan informed us that those are not composting at the rate that they would like to see. And the state statute actually says that if communities use anything but paper, then they have to meet a certain ASTM standard. So we've done some research. Ours don't technically meet that ASTM standard. So what we're gonna do is stop selling those, the plastic yard waste bags and allow the public to use just the brown craft paper bags. Our research locally shows that you can actually buy those brown bags cheaper than you can buy the ones that we have been selling. So last week we made phone calls to all the store managers in the area and make sure that they're aware of that so they could stock up and have more, because there's going to be more demand by the public once we put that out there. So we'll do the same thing with the garbage bags.
We can use up the other ones we have though.
We are not going to accept those, no.
You'll refund them?
You can use them for regular trash until they start to break down.
Which will take about 2 years or less. That's how they disintegrate in my garage.
There's times where in the springtime, we start opening up, we start selling them, and people put stuff in and they blast open.
Yeah.
There's other times where they last, and they're not breaking down in the compost operation like they should, so.
And then, since you're up there, how is the recycling going?
So please keep in mind that the paper cardboard is handled by MCC, by Catholic Central. I've heard or had some reports that it gets full and has created some messes. I know that they've been in conversations with PCA to get a second trailer or at least rotate them more often. As far as the stuff on the city side, Republic forgot the first week we had the commingled trailer out there, they forgot to dump it and it was full. So for me, that was a success because we knew for sure that people were using it. There's been some debris that's been put out there, but it wasn't, not a lot of trash. It was just people dropping off their plastic and not wanting to put it inside. So we've been checking that on a weekly basis, and it actually seems to be a little bit cleaner than the previous site.
Is MCC still having kids go out at certain times to help put
Yes. The cardboard, yes.
I believe they are.
Do we advertise that at all? To help, hey, if, aren't they having issues where people are just putting the cardboard at the front of the trailer?
Yeah.
And that's why they're blowing out?
I'm not aware how they operate the trailer.
I was there last night with cardboard, and the trailer was virtually empty, and, you know, there wasn't anything at the, you know, the front of the trailer, and also the commingled bin there was room to put stuff in there. So last night there was a little loose cardboard on the ground. I think that's inevitable, but I did see a couple of, I assume to be students out there looking around the area.
Yeah, they've got the kids going in and to push it way back once or twice a week. And then the older people are having trouble climbing those steps.
Yeah.
So they just told them to put it up on the steps.
That's why I'm saying, if, like, with the older people, if they know that the kids are out there, maybe they would come when those kids are out there to help them bring this.
No, that'd be up
cardboard.
to the school to ask.
It's really hard to get a schedule for them. They do it, some of them it's when they have their spare time or.
All right, I thought there was like a.
They've been operating that trailer for years and years and
Right.
years. So they've got a program, I'm sure with the entire city, fiber being taken there, they're just gonna have to adapt and adjust, and there'll probably be some, you know, growing pains in that.
They got some of the parents going out there.
But I do have a suggestion, and again, something further on is to look at an access road going back and forth from that, because right now people find their way there through sideways through the parking lots, and because there's no specific route saying here's where it is from 12th Street, and go down that street and go straight across and get to the back. So I know that some people have been kind of cruising the parking lot, so to speak.
Well, I've talked to a lot of them, and I tell them all you can do is go behind the school.
Yep.
Is there signage?
Right now, there's no signage, that's what I'm saying.
There's signage on 12th Street directing you
Yeah.
back there.
The only complaint we've gotten the last 2 weeks was from a resident on Fox Farm Road who was upset that it changed locations.
That's interesting.
Not
Very interesting.
not really a city resident, right?
Nothing? Did you send them a bill?
I have one thing other before we adjourn. I received an email from Ken Armour, the owner of the Ironworks. He would like to meet with council members to kind of go over what he's got in mind. He was approved for his medical marijuana.
A marijuana grow
Facility.
They don't have any distinguished
Okay.
what it's used for once it's grown, so.
So I went through the planning commission. Anyway, he would like to meet with some council members to kind of talk about what he has plans and maybe get a little input from us. We can't do that all together. Is there anybody that'd be interested in meeting and seeing what's going to happen there?
Yeah, I would be.
I'd like to meet, but.
I'd go with them.
Okay, so
I know a lot of times the meetings are during the day.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to attend those meetings because I work.
Working people do have that problem. It's universal.
A lot of the
working
times I
people.
can't go to this thing,
We can-
so just keep that in mind. Maybe lunch
can
hour.
Yeah, if we can do a
I can
lunch hour,
have
that would work.
Kelly's arrange some times and have her, we'll put the arm on Ken and tell him at least there's got to be a time frame that's,
And 2 usually works.
Or how about in the evening?
Or even, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work too.
Appreciate that. With
And
that,
then, wait, one more
okay,
thing.
one more thing.
I'm sorry. Just update on the election. Was there any issues?
Everything went great.
Okay.
We were done with everything by 9:30, which was great. I wasn't expecting to be done until a lot later, so things went really smooth. We didn't have any issues.
Seems like you had a lot more absentee ballots than,
We did, I looked back to 2016 to the last state, or the last presidential primary, and our total voter turnout for that one was like 37%. We were just over 39% for this, but it wasn't broken out from that election what was AV and what was in the precincts, because they were doing the AVs in the precincts then. But yes, I believe that our numbers were probably significantly higher with the AVs than what they were back then. So, and I did have several people fill out forms yesterday in the precinct to be put on the AV list for future elections. So we had quite a few of those. So I expect those numbers to continue to increase as the year goes on.
I thought maybe we didn't have as many because of the whole virus thing too. They didn't want to come out.
We had, I think one precinct was like 374 and the other was 381 for people that showed up at the precinct. So, you know, they were steady. We didn't have anybody waiting in line. We didn't have any issues with that. They were steady, but they handled everything well. The polls have closed. They closed at 8 o'clock. I think everybody was back here between 8:30, 8:45. We had everything wrapped up into the county by 9:30. So, and that's excellent.
Now, is that the earliest you've ever finished?
That's the earliest I've ever finished, yes.
It was reported by 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we were, I think I transmitted electronically, it was about 8:30. I had things 8:30, 8:45. I had it transmitted electronically, and then the receiving board has to just make sure they have everything that we're supposed to have, and then we take it to the county. So it's just another formal process.
Well, you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. It went really well. I have some excellent workers, and I hope they all know how much we appreciate them.
Okay, I'm done.
Anything else, Erin?
I'm done.
Anything else? We're adjourned.